Yeah, it's me. I'm currently working on what would have been video number 2 for my channel, and I realized that it's gonna take a lot more thought and or work. So I'm going to indulge in more of everyone's favorite type of content, McDonald's slop. But seriously, I actually do think that this is another strong thought piece within the context of not just Yu-Gi-Oh, but TCGs as a whole, and things that I think needn't be in there. I don't think I'm alone either in thinking this, as typically it's cards of this type of design that end up on ban lists or end up being the center focus of a lot of bad beat stories that you may hear at events.
Also, major shout out and thanks to Vlad for editing the majority of this video, which I then had to butcher and redo. Thank you, Vlad. I'm game.
So sit back, grab something unhealthy. I'm actually gonna grab something now. Grab a cold one and enjoy Bradley Bidley Bingus's best broken bumbles of TCG design you've ever seen. It's gonna be a fucking banger. Unaffected monsters, or towers, in the context of Yu-Gi-Oh, Apocryph or towers is what popularized the term. Essentially, the nature of these cards is just to kind of present an invincible boss monster slash walking fridge that your opponent has to answer lest they kind of lose the actual ability to win the game. This new type of threat was able to establish itself at the European Championships in 2015 when these handsome gentlemen came up with this fun little bundle of joy. It basically is just a deck that uses a lot of consistency elements and deep draw elements to use the Cliffort engine to establish a boss monster that would essentially be an immovable object across multiple turns, resulting in the opponent losing to that among a recurring force of Cliffort monsters. This type of strategy then went on to exist in other forms if you count things like Agnista, Super Quantum, Black Wings even have one, and the most recent one is Lunalight. In fairness, these types of options typically aren't what you would say end up being the central focus or the best options in a format, because they are typically a lot easier to out. But the way that they kind of interact with the rest of the format, as opposed to how everything else in the format interacts with each other, what the fuck, kind of skew deck building, because you now need to make that kind of educated decision. How likely is it am I going to play against this kind of non-interactive strategy across 12 rounds? Some people go without having an out anywhere in their deck list, believing that the risk is not great enough. There are those that find creative ways to factor it into deck building, but even if players are able to do that, it still has a significant impact on deck building, because you are now deciding to use one of your very finite 15 extra deck or 15 side deck or one of potentially 60 main deck cards just to factor in a tier 2 deck. Also, I think the essence of this kind of card design promotes like an unwillingness to interact. If we're willing to stigmatize large-scale end boards that are multiple forms of negation, surely we should be doing the same for an immovable object surrounded by forms of interaction to protect it. Also, I really fucking hate Lunalight. Can we just ban Liger Dancer so I can live my life again? Number 9 is not so much a card design element, but something that doesn't seem to exist in card design, particularly in older forms of card design, and that's limitations or once per turn, resulting in infinite loops. I recently watched a Magic the Gathering video where a pro player is snuck into a tournament, in some sort of cash tournament, and this is what he had to say about one of his rounds.
That usually means game over. How do you deal infinite damage to someone with a few 6-power titans?
Can you say actual?
Say I have 750 million life.
Okay. If I also go infinite,
Yes.
then what happens?
Now let's...
I'm gonna make 750 million titles.
Wait, what? Stop the music. Let's hear that again?
My opponent made 750 million life, and then I made 750 million titans.
Wow! So the answer to doing infinite things was to just also do infinite things? Don't hate me just yet, Magic players. I will also concede that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is also immensely guilty of this type of thing. If you don't believe me, you can always just check out Squiddy's video on the Gishki FTK. This strategy, piloted by Alan Pennington, didn't just threaten the other players in the room, it happened to threaten the logistics of the event itself.
Now, one of the more unique issues that the Gishki FTK had was, given the number of steps it took to deck the opponent out, it could take anywhere up to 40 minutes to complete a singular game. Given that back then the rounds were 40 minutes and went to additional turns, rather than the now sudden end of match procedure, matches could go into additional turns in a second game, meaning that matches in those days could be anywhere from, when factoring in the Gishki FTK, could be anywhere from 40 to 80 minutes.
If you can understand the notion that companies are only hiring venue halls for a certain number of days or hours, this stands to put all of that at risk. It just shows that, aside from all the in-game type issues it could raise, infinite loops can actually stand to promote outside consequences to TCGs as well. Number 8 is essentially a problem that a lot of players have had with Yu-Gi-Oh! Over the last infinite years, and that's the Omni negate.
The concept of an Omni negate is pretty straightforward. It's a nope on legs. Typically with Yu-Gi-Oh! It is to negate the activation and or effect of something, with sometimes even the additional bonus quality of destroying or banishing the card, or doing anything that just kind of removes the value of that card entirely. It's not really hard to see why, in the context of Yu-Gi-Oh! That would be a problem, considering that, given how modernized and fast-paced the game is, and how accessible it makes a lot of the cards in the extra deck, you're able to generate any number between 3 to 5 end board pieces that historically can be some form of hard disruption. Not only is this an issue in that it completely invalidates the opponent's efforts to play back into your board, it's also an issue because chances are those same types of hard negation will have made you completely immune to disruption when setting up your own board, turning off your opponent's capacity to disrupt your first turn plays. I would even go as far to say as, despite recent efforts to minimize the number of Omni negates that exist in the game, throwing 1 to 2 forms of hard negation on top of an obnoxiously large end board, despite how interactive other elements may be designed to be, it will still collectively invalidate the opponent's attempts to play back. Hard negation is almost like a safety blanket or an easy win button in some senses. Similarly to what I was saying with regards to the unaffected monsters,
It's something that, again, has that same level of non-interactiveness. Interactiveness? I might have just made up a word. Ultimately, this is a pretty obvious no-brainer in terms of why most players would have a problem with the Omni negate.
being able to generate a large number of bodies that can hard counter an opponent's plays promotes the same level of unwillingness to interact.
Number 7, again, another short and obvious one. I think unresponsive elements are typically kind of an issue.
An unresponsive element is as it implies. If I do something, you cannot respond to it. You can see why that's probably quite limiting in terms of game design. So nice here. Haha, just joking. I'm not actually at the beach. I've put it on the television in my room whilst I was editing the video. Vlad's already done a lot of editing on this, and I was so shit I had to do more work. I guess maybe the only redeeming element of those unresponsive type cards would be like if they're designed to counteract large scale end boards full of Omni negates. But you know what they say about two wrongs. I think if you ever get to a point where you have to design stuff like that to counteract your own bad game design, I think it says a lot about the game itself. Plus, we've had stuff like that in Yu-Gi-Oh! And people still play around it. This game is done.
Currently, it hasn't been a factor, but my issue is that when you add that to what could potentially be a format defining card, you're reducing the capacity for skill expression and play around. Number 6 is something that seems really weird, and I assure you it's proven to be a lot more harmful than it has been good in recent years. But giving your opponent monsters seems to have proven to be something that it relates or is more parallel or akin to something that is much further up the list. If we as a community or as TCG enjoyers are willing to accept restrictions and locks within an attempt to demonstrate some restrained level of gameplay, it shouldn't be something that we're able to inflict onto our opponent. Number 5 is stacking your opponent's deck, which has actually been legal at one point in time. Just don't, innit? Just fuck off. When Spiral was the best deck, you had the capacity to not only amass a large-scale board that was nearly unoutable going first, you also gained perfect information as to what your opponent was playing, as well as to take the top 3 cards of their deck and rearrange them in a way that would reduce your opponent's ability to play back, whilst, as I said before, give you perfect information as to what they're playing. Why? So a lot of those elements, as you can kind of guess, I don't really have like much to say about them. I think they're pretty obvious as to what the issues are that align with them. But this is where it gets really fun. This is one of the worst ones. Hand loop, extra deck loop, main deck loop. Hand looping, I'll reference a couple off the top of my head that I know. With hand looping, it's things like, confiscation, Neospatian Aqua Dolphin. Oh my god, do you remember when people used to use Trap Dust Shoe and taking notes was legal? Like, it's bad enough that you've fucked my hand, but now you're sat there writing the rest of my hand on the fucking notepad. You fucking nerd. Honestly, awful fucking design. There was this video that I watched, I think like 10 years ago, like GDC, where the guys who basically manage the game design for Magic the Gathering talk about all the things that they did and didn't do, and they talk about how they designed this archetype of cards that got better when you have no cards in your hand, and the community apparently really fucking hated those cards because they like the idea of playing with cards, so it's almost like when they print cards that take cards out of your hand or your opponent's hand, they're just waging war on fun. I think one of my favorite things about playing TCG sometimes is, I think when I'm playing my turn, I like the idea of having a myriad of options, not just kind of making do with the limited options I have left at the start of my first turn because my opponent only ripped 4 cards with Gunblar Dragon that people were really proud of for using. Yes, my Element Saber deck rips 6 with Gunblar. Fuck. I think the only time I've ever seen hand disruption ever be attempted to be designed fairly is in Pokemon. A lot of the cards that you see here in Roxanne, Iono, Unfair Stamp, they're typically in favor of the player who's behind. It appears to be an attempt at playback, considering the pacing of Pokemon. Now, I don't play Pokemon avidly, but I'm not sure if I'm in favor of attempting to design cards that punishes the opponent for just being ahead. But I don't play Pokemon, and this might be deemed by its community as something that is an appropriate counter method to advocate for a semblance of back and forth gameplay. If anyone loves obscure, now dead TCGs, Duel Masters is my favorite TCG probably ever. The only reason I'm not playing it today as opposed to Yu-Gi-Oh is because it doesn't exist. They also aren't without fault, you know. They printed stuff like Lost Soul and Cranium Clamp. The general gist of like dark strategies then was that's associated with destruction and hand ripping and all those cool things. Yeah, hang on, sorry. He forgot to mention main deck ripping. Okay, in the clamp we go. So yeah, in addition to these two cards that were very, very good in their respective game, they also printed Future Slash and Slash Charger. Future Slash would allow you, the player who uses it, to pick up your opponent's deck and send 2 cards of your choice to their graveyard. Slash Charger would only send 1, but it goes to your mana instead of going to the grave. In addition to getting perfect information about the contents of your deck, I can remove key integral parts from it. I think if this ever happened in Yu-Gi-Oh, it would probably spark outrage. Deck building is one of Yu-Gi-Oh's strongest drawing points. To have your opponent reach into your deck and just bin a key piece of your strategy is far from quality gameplay. Don't know why, it was really annoying to play against. 15-year-old Brad still remembers. Extra deck ripping is probably, in the context of Yu-Gi-Oh, one of the most egregious forms of card design ever. Yu-Gi-Oh kind of prides itself on having this extra deck that is a utility belt of options, and you've essentially allowed players to get a sneaky peek at what's in there and take key elements out. You don't need that Fiendsmith Requiem or T-Elements Kick Kalos, you know, these cards that have historically been played at 1 of, and in previous formats have had to be played at 2 copies in a general effort to play around these cool, all-seeing, all-knowing elements of gameplay, card design bullshit. It's so funny that I've been recording and making this video for the best part of a week. No, not because I've really thought it out, I'm just really bad at content creation. But throughout this process, they've just announced the new invoked cards, and the reactions have been...
Then, if you use the 3 or more, you can look at your opponent's extra deck and banish up to 3 cards from it. Bro, who made these? What am I looking at? What am I looking at? It's so stupid, man.
This card is used to summon banished cards from the field and grave of the number of materials used. Wait. Then if you use 3 or more, you look at... No, stop printing cards to do this. What the fuck?
So now we get to the big 3, and 2 of them are more or less the same, but I've put one beneath the other. I don't think it matters at this point. I think all 10 that I'm going to mention today are fucking annoying. Number 3 is Floodgate, in brackets, continuous. So continuous floodgates are the ones that have to remain face up. And based on that kind of description, you know what the second one's going to be. Continuous floodgates stand to remove or turn off, as the name implies, an aspect of the game. I don't see the appeal there. There's this one time at the European Championships in 2022, you know, the one post-COVID where like the prizing was like the first real good prizing ever. Yeah, I was playing in the top 64 and I got paired against Flu and I lost the match that gave us like 3 grand in prizing because my opponent summoned Wind Barrier Statue and I lost. So He deserved it. Don't get me wrong. If these types of cards are legal, particularly in a competitive setting, and they improve my chances of winning, I am going to use them 100% of the time. There is nothing immoral about using strong cards in a competitive environment. The issue is that these cards do not draw people to play the game, myself included, especially when they're of a nature that creates more non-games than games by turning off elements of gameplay. And as a community that wants to enjoy their game, it is natural to be vocal in protest to these types of elements. However, that issue lies with those who maintain the game to address. When I got into playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or other players have done demos for Yu-Gi-Oh! You don't see the demo team or the rulebook advocate for this kind of behavior. If your opponent summons a monster, why don't you just flip skill drain and say fuck off? If your opponent's deck is full of pendulum monsters, why don't you tell him to go outside and touch grass by flipping anti-spell fragrance? If your opponent's deck uses the graveyard, why don't you just flip Macrocosmos and banish it all instead? There's a shopping... What the fuck? Anyway, so I guess that means now that we've kind of described what a continuous floodgate is, what do you mean there's a worse version of it? Continuous floodgates have kind of like this built-in strength and weakness at the same time in the fact that they have to remain face up on the field. If they're face up on the field, they can exist across multiple turns, meaning that the longer the game goes on for, the lower the chance of playing back the opposing player has. But given the modernization of card game design recently, would it matter if it was just one turn that was forfeited? And that's why I think that at number 2, floodgates that are lingering are way worse. Well, I say way worse, they're both pretty fucking turn brain off, brain ouchie type gameplay. The difference between these two types of cool gameplay design is that if a floodgate has to remain face up, at least you can interact with it. Cards like SP, Little Knight in a Yu-Gi-Oh! In the context of Yu-Gi-Oh! It can be turned off. You can banish the card. Potentially at a great expense, but at least the option's there. If I am playing against Draco Tail in Leo format and I activate Dimensional Barrier and I call the one extra deck type in their deck, they don't get the option to try and turn that off. They have to concede the notion that their deck that is heavily centralized and locks you into fusion summoning can't fusion summon, and there's no interacting with it once it's resolved. It's done. Like, for this turn, out of luck, bucko. Especially in a game that is so modernized and fast-paced, any forfeiture of tempo is essentially just a death sentence. I recently watched a feature match of a Pokemon regional where a player won by stunning the opponent with Badoo and its Itchy Pollen attack. Turning off an aspect of your game is weird. So far, I've kind of said that, like, oh, okay, you lose your hand, or you can't access cards of this type for a turn, or you can't do X, Y, or Z for a turn, or your opponent has a monster that's unoutable. But what if you never had a turn to begin with? Like, who the fuck thinks that's a good idea? Fuck me. Please tell me I don't actually have to elaborate on why skipping a player's turn in a 2-player game is considered egregious design. Oh, you're still watching, fuck me. Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, so turn skipping in a 2-player game is obviously quite egregious because if you're sat across from someone and they skip your turn, wouldn't you be pissed? Card games like Yu-Gi-Oh!, from what I know from the 10 plus years of playing it competitively, we get criticized a lot for our game being solitaire-esque and unbreakable boards and X, Y, and Z being the most uninteractive card game ever. There's no reason to go one step further and actively turn off an opponent's turn entirely. And there are so many different elements of design that have resulted in turn skips. Infinite loops are the byproduct of not putting limitations on a card, which is bad. But actively promoting that a player's turn is skipped is insane. It's insane. It's unreal. Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't have a lot of actual turn skips. It has figurative turn skips, but fuck you, they're effectively the same thing. Yu-Gi-Oh has 4 turn skips. One of them was banned. Not for the turn skipping though, it was because it cheated out an extra deck monster in the form of Azathoth, which is a lingering floodgate. But with the next installment of Tellarknight monsters, this could be a viable turn skip deck. The new big swinging dick on the block in Riftbound has already started printing turn skips and elements that turn off opposing interaction. There's one TCG I alluded to earlier that, whilst it's near and dear to my heart, probably made the most egregious fuck up in terms of card design. So Bombazar, Dragon of Destiny, is Duel Master's kind of fuck you to its very small but loyal player base, in the fact that it essentially, well, not essentially, it literally gives the player who summons it a second turn. Ooh, but if you don't win in 2 turns, you lose. This card was obviously banned, by the way. It was banned in the TCG before the TCG died, after we kind of were given the middle finger by Wizards of the Coast, I think it was. And it's banned in Japan, where the game still thrives somehow. So to me, it like actively shows that if these things become prominent and they're banned, it's them acknowledging that, yep, we know it shouldn't be a thing. I just think when players are calling for this type of stuff to be banned or removed from the game, they don't need it. They don't advocate for it. As I said earlier in the video, if the demo team that you see at places like Comic-Con are showing you the game and you're interested in it through its mechanics, it's not like as if you're asking like, oh, does this game have turn skips? Does this game have floodgates? I really need those, by the way. Is there hand looping? Why is it just resource management and a war of attrition? I don't want there to be skill expression in my game. So yeah, ultimately, companies fuck up and print this stuff. Let me know what you think is something that I didn't add to the list. Respectfully, motherfuckers, comment down below and let's have a chat. I'm always willing to have a discussion or a conversation regarding TCGs, because this shit's my jam. This is supposed to be McDonald's content. I'm pretty sure I've got like an hour's worth of footage,